In 2006, I was homeless, addicted to drugs, walking down the streets of Indianapolis, Indiana. I had come to a crossroads where I needed to decide if I was going to go deeper into the streets or do something else. I didn't know what that was, but God knew. He had orchestrated a few events that night when I was walking down the street, and He called me out. He did in Isaiah 41:9 for me what it says. He took me from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners, and He said to me, I have chosen you. I have not rejected you. You are my servant. And a van had driven by, and an arm came out the window with the flyer. And all he said was, sister, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, give us a call. I took the flyer, I put it in my pocket, and I kept walking down the street. I didn't have any money. I hadn't eaten in a few days. The police had taken my car that day, so that was kind of a safe spot for me, having my car out there on the streets. But they took my car and sent me walking. And so I went to an abandoned apartment that night, and nobody else was there at that apartment. It was just me, which was unusual, because usually it was full of people doing drugs. But that night, nobody showed up. And as I laid on an old dirty mattress on the floor of this abandoned apartment, I pulled that flyer out, and it said, if you have family problems, drug problems, alcohol problems, then first call on Jesus. I was in my 30s, and I had not done that as an adult, and I just kept thinking, goodness, I'm not doing so well. And I started calling on Jesus, but I didn't even know how to call out to Jesus, but the Spirit in me did. And so the Spirit called out to Jesus, and there I laid, and the Lord lifted the addiction off of me immediately. I got rest for the first time in years. I slept all night, and nobody showed up that night. And I got up in the morning, and the next line on that flyer said, then call us. We have a women's home free of charge. So I went to a payphone and called the 800 number that was on that flyer, and they were in Ohio, 3 hours away from Indianapolis. They sent me a bus ticket, and I went to the women's home. When I got there, the first thing I did is I asked God to forgive me of my sin, because I knew that I was the worst sinner of all. There was no other sinner like me. I had had an abortion at 16, and then when I became pregnant again at 18, well, I knew what to do. I had my second abortion at 18, but the cycle didn't stop. And so at 20, when I became pregnant for the third time, again, I had my third abortion. And then at 24 in Las Vegas, the cycle just didn't stop. So I had my fourth abortion, and I knew that I was the worst sinner of all. So I asked God, I said, Lord, I took the lives of my 4 children. Would you please forgive me? And He audibly said, daughter, my son Jesus Christ died for you. So I knew I was forgiven. So I tucked that secrecy of shame and guilt back into my heart to never speak about it again. I had no reason. And so if we fast forward 10 years, in 2016, I heard the words abortion recovery. And when I heard those words, I didn't know that I needed abortion recovery. I wasn't thinking about my abortions. I didn't think I had any more trauma of the abortions, because I was forgiven. The Lord told me He forgave me. But then now, the Lord is telling me that I needed healing. And so I was forgiven in 2006 by the blood of Jesus and what He did on the cross for me. But then in 2016, I went through a Bible study, and that's when I became healed. And now I can tell my story, and I want to tell my story, because I am healed and forgiven and redeemed. And I want other women to know that, and men, that Jesus forgives you. Abortion is not the unforgivable sin. You might be thinking, lady, that's you. That's your story. My story is even worse. Well, that's what I thought. I thought my story was the worst of them all. I didn't think God could use me. How could he ever use me? I took the lives of 4 children. But I am telling you that God has turned me around, and he has used what the enemy meant for evil for his glory, and he can do that for you too. Anyone that's out there listening to me, he loves you, and he wants you in his life. He wants you to turn to him in your pain and your hurt. Whatever it is that you've done, whatever it is that you're struggling with, the Lord can use you, and he wants to use you. He loves you.